Hello, and welcome to the Point in Time Count online training. I'm Alessandra Dominguez. I will be one of 3 Point in Time Count trainers that you'll be on this journey with. With me will be Melissa Wheeler, Richard Dodson, and Whitney Bright. You are opting to do the online training today, but if you feel it necessary, you can definitely join us for an in-person training. You are one out of roughly 600 volunteers that will help Austin Travis County to carry out a successful point in time count this January. So for that, we'd really like to thank you for taking the time to volunteer with us. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few helpful tips on way to navigate this training. If you're watching this video via YouTube, we will be making references to materials and links. You can find those links below in the description box. If you're watching this training via PowerPoint, you can simply click the links within the PowerPoint and it will take you to the necessary materials. Without further ado, we're going to go get started with this training, and we look forward to counting with you this January. This year's point in time count will be completed Saturday, January 26, 2019, bright and early, with the first wave of counters getting started at 3 a.m. We'll go into more detail about what times people will set off to do their count. I'd like to take this time to go over today's training agenda to give you a sense of what to expect today. We'll go over the point in time count background, objectives, how data is collected, why it's collected, and a little bit about homelessness here in Austin. We'll also take a deeper dive into the logistics, the where, the how, and the what, to make sure you feel confident and comfortable when you head out for your count. We'll also go over instructions of the point in time count census form. This year we have a new census form that we're very excited, and we hope that you enjoy the new form as much as we do. We'll also go over how to complete the count safely, best ways to do outreach and scouting of your designated areas, what to look out for, how to engage individuals experiencing homelessness appropriately. We'll answer some frequently asked questions and give you some helpful next steps. Lastly, before we wrap everything up, we will ask you to take a quiz over today's learnings. You must score a minimum of a 70 to pass, and we do ask you that you please sign the volunteer release form. With all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick off this training to my wonderful colleagues, Richard, Melissa, and Whitney, and I hope to see you at this year's point in time count.
The point in time count, or PID count, is something that is an annual census of the homeless population here in Austin Travis County. Now, numbers from this census are used to contribute to both local and to national data. This is also something that is required by HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development, to count all of our unsheltered and sheltered individuals in Austin that are experiencing homelessness. Across the country, thousands of volunteers survey assigned areas to count and engage people that are experiencing homelessness to gather numbers and demographics around the community. The point in time count is also an opportunity to bring volunteers and our community together to help end homelessness. It's also an opportunity to share resource with people who are unsheltered and potentially service disconnected.
The work of the point in time count is based around teams. As a general volunteer, you will be a member of a team. Team sizes vary quite a bit, but no less than 3. Each team has a team lead. We've already identified over 70 team leads who are out in the community looking for people, looking for campsites, scouting the area, doing outreach. They've received additional training for guiding volunteer teams during the count, as well as doing the search and outreach. On the morning of the count, you can expect to engage and survey people who are experiencing homelessness. We ask that you do this safely. We ask that you do this respectfully. And we need you to make an impact. And this is your opportunity to make an impact as we gather the information that we need to be able to end homelessness.
So you might be wondering, what is the objective of the PID count? One of the main objectives of the PID count is to determine a total number of unsheltered and sheltered individuals who are experiencing homelessness in Austin. It provides quantitative results in homelessness with stratified outcomes by homeless subpopulations. Some of the local subpopulations that we're specifically interested in this year are youth. Some of the other things we do is compare results with previous counts so that we can get information and assess the improvements that we need to make as a community and what kind of services we need to give to people that are experiencing homelessness. The final objective of the PIT count is really to allow us to ask for funding from HUD. In order to ask for funding from HUD, we need to be able to have great data, and this helps us to and allows us to do that.
Another goal of the point-in-time count is to learn more about those that are unsheltered in Austin-Travis County. We are required to gather information like how long they have been homeless, their age, race, gender, and any self-reported disabilities which may cause issue and or make it difficult to maintain housing and or employment. Something to remember is that these surveys are always anonymous unless the individual wishes to give us their identifying information. If they do wish to share, we may be able to connect them to community resources.
If you haven't worked with people who are experiencing homelessness before, sometimes it's hard to understand the face of homelessness. The most visible faces of homelessness that we see in our community are sometimes the faces we see when we're driving home on our daily commute, but others are less visible, living in camps, cars, and abandoned buildings. From years past, some of the data that we have collected tells us that the largest subpopulations of those experiencing homelessness in Austin are individuals at 81%, most of which are males. African Americans come in at 42% of our population in Austin, and most of those experiencing homelessness fall between 45 and 64 years of age.
Austin-Travis County has been conducting the shelter and unsheltered count for several years. As the years go by, we definitely have been able to pick up more skills and techniques to make a successful count. There will always be factors that come into play that will either increase or decrease the amount of people that we can count the day of our point-in-time count. For example, weather. Weather definitely plays a factor. If it's really cold the day of the count, more people will be in shelter and or more inclined to get a hotel room, which will then decrease the amount of people that we've been able to count. If the weather is really nice, then we may be able to count more individuals, which will then increase the count. There will always be imperfections, but we always try our hardest to gather as much information and meet with as many people that are experiencing homelessness as possible. For a little more information about the data we collected in last year's point-in-time count versus what we will hopefully collect this year, last year, as you can see, that we had a 5% increase from the previous years. Even though we did have a small increase, the overall trend has been decreasing. If you want more information on last year's point-in-time count data, please click the link. If you're on PowerPoint, you can click the link within the slide. And if you're in YouTube, please feel free to scroll down to the description and there will be an active link there.
So the geographical area that we are responsible for is all of Travis County, all of the city of Austin, including those parts that spill over into Williamson and Hayes, as you can see on this map. The entire county and the entire city are split up into various sections. You'll see that they are largely based on the city council districts or the municipalities that exist in the more rural areas of the county. We have everything from deep urban core downtown Austin all the way out to the Balcones Wildlife Refuge that we need to make sure that we know how many people are experiencing homelessness in each of these sections. And so the downtown sections start at 3 a.m. As we get further out, we'll have shifts that start at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. to provide more daylight hours in the more rural areas where safety is a factor.
As we've talked about before, as far as the how of logistics of how we do the pit count every year, you're split into teams, no less than a minimum of 3 people per team covering an area. Every team has a team lead that we've explained earlier, has lots of additional training to help with the day of the count. In areas that there are greater numbers of people sleeping unsheltered, more volunteers and more team leads will be covering the area. In our map that we showed you previously, there are going to be a lot more people covering the downtown regions of Austin. The team leads of each team are in direct contact the day of the count with ECHO staff at headquarters. This goes to serve for safety reasons, for coordination reasons, and all different ways that we can make the pit count the best that we can.
Each team will be given a bag of supplies that they will pick up at headquarters. The bag will include hygiene kits, socks, bus passes, and other items to pass out to any individual that you come across during the count that is experiencing homelessness. Your bag will also consist of flashlights, clipboards, and any other community resource that you find it necessary to give out.
The point in time count has a headquarters. St. Martin's Lutheran Church downtown has been nice enough to host us for many years as our pit count headquarters. The week of the pit count will have multiple in-person trainings that are also located at St. Martin's Lutheran Church. The team leads stop and start here at the headquarters the morning of the count, and data and forms are collected here the day of the count as well. The team leads will come in and give all of your forms that you've collected of the data, and we will ask them questions if need be and get all of that sorted out so that we can collect the best data possible. A little bit more information about headquarters. If you happen to be on one of the teams that is serving the downtown regions, you probably will stop and start at St. Martin's Lutheran Church downtown. However, if you're in the outline sections, there is a very good chance that you will not accompany your team lead back to St. Martin's whenever they are returning to give us their forms. There at headquarters, staff will be on hand to make sure that all of your surveys are transferred to the data team for review. At this time as well, we will ask your team leads any questions that we have about the data that you collected. So make sure and give all of your information to your team leads before they return to headquarters. Staff will also be available to debrief with you about your experience. So you can come and give us great experiences that you had during your pit count, or if you have something that you need to work through that happened during pit count, we're happy to be there and discuss that with you. We also have coffee, donuts, and all of that will be provided there. Either before you leave your team, if you're out in rural sections, or when you're at headquarters, make sure and talk as a team about your surveys and your forms to make sure that all of the information is correct, is easy to read before you leave headquarters or before you turn in your forms to be sent to headquarters. Also, please don't throw any of your surveys away. Even if you think you didn't complete it correctly, or if you have questions about what exactly you needed to do on the survey, don't throw it away. Send it with your team lead or take it to headquarters to us. Echo will make the final call if something needs to be thrown away in the end.
So how do we count folks? The same form will be used for both the census and observations. The census form for individuals or family unit will be used when the person you are speaking to has confirmed they slept unsheltered that night and opts to complete the survey with you. On the same form, you will have the option to use the observation box. This is used when the person is unable to participate because maybe they are asleep or they simply opt out of participation, but the volunteer believes they slept unsheltered that night. This is what the PIT census form looks like. This form is in both English and Spanish versions. We highly suggest pausing this training to download the form so you are able to get a better look at it. A little bit of an overview of what we are collecting. We are collecting demographic information about people experiencing homelessness the night of the count. We are also collecting information about their family members. Looking at the form, the second question is where you will collect the information for both the head of the household and if they have any family members with them. If there are more than 2 people together as a family, extra family member information boxes are on the back side of this form for you to collect that data. If you have any questions about this form, please make sure to ask your questions before the day of the count. Your team lead should be in contact with you before the count and can answer any questions you may have. No need to print these forms out. They will be provided to you on the day of the count. The instructions link will give you step-by-step instructions on how to fill out the PIT census form. It will also explain in greater detail the differences between the census form for individuals or family unit and the observation form. Just a reminder, these are on the same form but are deciphered by checking the observation form box on the right-hand side. There are several reasons you may not be able to complete the census form. Someone might not be awake after you've announced yourself. Someone may decline from participating, or someone may be in a campsite or visible to you, but in a place that you feel like is not safe. You will be filling out questions 1, 2, and 10 the best you can. If you are able, please be sure to write any unique characteristics of each person and/or a description of their vehicle or a campsite to avoid any double counting. What will the process look like the day of the count? You will be approaching people who are experiencing homelessness. Obviously, you will want to keep in mind your safety and the safety of those you are counting. Every time you are beginning the collection of information, you'll first start off by reading the consent statement at the top of the census form to obtain verbal consent. This is something to pay attention to, and if you feel the person you are speaking to is not comfortable, it is perfectly fine to not move forward. So when you are completing the survey, please do not feel like you need to pressure anyone to complete it. If they'd like to skip a question, let them. Be sure to thank them for their participation and leave them with resources such as a bus pass, hygiene kit, or anything you may have in your bag provided by your team lead. Remember, only count people you can actually see. If you can't see them, we can't verify they were there. When you are first approaching someone or a campsite, say loudly and clearly, for example, "Hello, my name is Whitney. I'm volunteering for the point in time count." We are approaching people in their own space and want to do our very best not to startle them. Do not knock on tents, shelters, or vehicles. Remember, if someone does not respond, but you can clearly see them, Step back and fill out the observation form.
Let's talk a little bit about safety at the point in time count. So it needs to be said that we have never had a significant safety concern the night of the count. In saying that, we always have these results because we are incredibly careful, and we hope to train you to be able to be incredibly careful as well. So some of the things that we do is we always stay in groups of 3 or more. You need to stay within eyesight of your group members. Sometimes you want to venture off on your own. You get an idea that someone might be around a corner. Stay with the group. Don't get away from your group at all. Make sure and wear comfortable and warm clothing. You have no idea what the weather is going to be in Central Texas until the night of the count, so make sure and wear something that is appropriate. You're going to want to bring a backpack and a flashlight, some water, and make sure and fully charge your cell phone before you come to the pit count. Always remain aware of your environment and have an exit route planned at all times. First and foremost, it's important to trust your judgment, trust your gut. If you feel uncomfortable or threatened at all, remove yourself from that situation. Your gut is always right.
We've already noted that we want you to be in groups of 3 at all times, and we're going to note it one more time. We want you to work in teams. Always ask if it is okay to ask questions. As you reviewed on the census form, some of these questions are very personal, and so you always want to make sure that you are giving people a little bit of warning about that and giving them the opportunity to say, no, I'm done. You also want to be respectful of their space. Even if it is a piece of sidewalk in front of a building, that is their space for that time, at that moment. You are encouraged to try to wake people up, but don't touch anyone. Like I said, don't get punched in the face. If someone does not want to participate, you can respect their choice and complete an observation form instead. This also applies in situations where you feel like maybe there is danger, and so you're not going to put yourself into danger. Instead, the observation form can be how you gather information on the people that you have served.
A couple more safety tips for the night of the count. If you happen to encounter dogs in a particularly rugged area, make sure and remain calm. Take cues from the owners if it's possible and if they are with the dogs. But you also don't have to continue further if you're not sure of your safety. If you have an emergency the night of the count, make sure and know that you need to call 911. You also need to inform headquarters if an emergency has happened, and also if your team lead isn't right there with you, make sure and call your team lead and inform them of the situation as well.
Long before you arrive in your section on the morning of the count, your team lead has been doing quite a bit of work ahead of time, knowing the section, doing scouting, looking for campsites, looking for pathways into campsites. It's also important for you to know about these things as well, especially if you are in a situation where you split your group and your team lead goes off in one way and you and 2 other folks go on in another. Sometimes to be able to cover the space in the time allowed, you need to do that kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you know your section and boundaries. Each team will have maps, and very detailed maps of exactly what needs to be covered. Maps oftentimes include marks where we have found people in the past. So please feel free to use those. Check on Google Maps yourself, read through and figure out exactly where you need to be going so that if you do ever have to split up, that you can do everything that you need to do. This also becomes very important for deduplication. So if we have 2 teams that are adjacent to each other, crossing over into each other's boundaries, there's a very good chance that they might double count someone, especially if one team actually talks to the person and fills out a census form and the other team just fills out an observation. There's a very good chance we won't be able to tell whether or not those are the same people. So you do want to make sure that you stay within your section. How do I know where to go? Well, your team lead will tell you. You will stay within the boundaries of your maps, but your team lead, as part of the work leading up, will have already figured out the best routes to take, the best order to do things, how exactly to manage the count. Can you tell me where we found people last year? Absolutely. We have this information given to the team leads. We have information from APD, the Parks Department, other people who have found campsites in the past, outreach teams. All of those things are going to play into the information that we have so that you can spend your time as efficiently as possible. And as you notice, we have a link to a Google map. This is the base map that we use for planning the count. It includes links or pins of locations where we have found people in the past. As you'll notice, places where we found people last year do tend to cluster around I-35 and to a certain degree Highway 183. We do want to make sure that we cover the entire county, and we don't want to assume that just because we haven't found anybody in the far northwest corner in the past that we're not going to find anybody again. So we want to make sure that you count your section as thoroughly as possible.
As we've mentioned, your team lead has been doing a lot of outreach and scouting already before the night of the count. However, your team lead might actually reach out to you to do some scouting with them. This might be an opportunity where you could share information of where you might know people are sleeping unsheltered. Maybe you live in this area that you've decided to volunteer for, or you feel particularly connected to this part of Austin. Your team lead needs this information and would very much benefit from that kind of information if you have it. Your team lead and you as well should ask people in your area ahead of time if they are aware of anyone who may be sleeping unsheltered. Sometimes gas stations know this information in the area. In years past when I've done pit count, gas stations prove to be very valuable. Police officers in that area who are in that area at the time of the count are also helpful. There are lots of different people in each of these areas that will help the night of the count as well.
So, where do we look to see if we can find people experiencing homelessness? Well, under bridges is a pretty obvious thought. As you see, we have pictures of what campsites underneath an overpass might look like. But don't forget about smaller bridges. Maybe there is a small creek running through your area and just a tiny little culvert. Someone might be sleeping down there. I actually found a tent pitched underneath a bridge on Palmer Lane. I didn't even realize that was a bridge. This is part of the scouting, part of your outreach, so you want to be aware of these kinds of things ahead of time. But also, as you're out on the count, this is an excellent place to find people experiencing homelessness.
The night of the count, if you happen to see blankets, pillows, or sleeping bags, it is likely that these are signs of life and that someone has stayed there or slept there recently. This is definitely somewhere you want to visit the night of the count.
As you get further away from downtown into suburban and rural areas, you may see pathways leading off the main roads into wooded areas. It can be surprising how big of a camp you can find hidden behind just a few set of trees, not very far from the road. So it may be a well-worn path, it may be grass that has been knocked down somewhat. Some of them might be marked with a sign or a plastic bag tied to a tree, some other note so that they can find in the dark their pathway to their campsite.
On the night of the count, if you find yourself counting in more wooded areas, some of these pictures show a modified area that might have been used for a living or sleeping situation.
And sadly, we have people who have been experiencing homelessness for so long that they have done quite a bit of improvement at their campsites. Pathways, bridges, handrails. They might even have signs that give you instructions on how to announce yourself so that they aren't surprised. If in those situations, please do follow whatever instructions that they give you. Announce yourself ahead of time so that you're not surprising people. And again, be respectful. This is their home.
Here are some frequently asked questions that we've been asked before. What is the time commitment that we're asking you for as a volunteer? The total time commitment for a general volunteer is 5 to 6 hours. The good news is you're completing one of those hours right now on this online training. The night of the count, you might walk and or count people for 4 to 5 hours. Also, who is eligible for to be a volunteer? You have to be at least 18 years of age. You have to be able to walk approximately 2 to 3 miles, especially if you're going to be in the downtown regions. It's important to note that if you wish to volunteer but you're unable to walk, there are opportunities for you at headquarters that are not so physically demanding. So you also have to complete a 1-hour training session, either in person or online. And we also want to make sure that if you have children that need to be supervised the night of the count, you have somebody who is supervising them so that you don't have to bring them along.
So the count takes place across the entire expanse of Travis County and the city of Austin, but any given team will have a limited section that they will need to make sure that they cover. All teams will canvass different sections of the county and the city, and on the day of the count you will meet with your team leaders who will designate the place to meet. If you're counting downtown, there's a good chance that your team will meet at the St. Martin's headquarters. But for other sections of the city, your team lead will be in contact and let you know where you're all going to get together to begin the count. Do you need a car? No, you don't need a car. Some sections do need to have someone have a car, but if you aren't willing to use yours, that's perfectly fine. If you are willing to use yours, you've probably already mentioned that on your registration form. We've talked a lot about safety measures already. The main thing is to keep safety at the top of your mind at all times. So this training counts as part of our safety measures to make sure that everybody understands what is going to happen, what things will not happen. Safety protocols, coordination with law enforcement, specialized teams and strategies to count specific encampments or high volume areas, flashlights, cell phones, all of these are safety measures to help make sure that you come back in one piece.
As far as next steps, we need you to complete the volunteer release form to legally do the point in time count with us. This can be located at the second part of your Google quiz on the next slide, and we'll go over that in just a second. You should be hearing from your team leads very soon. If it becomes January 15th and you have not heard from your team lead, please get in contact with Tim Long, who is ECHO's point in time count coordinator. The team lead will be in contact with you for numerous reasons, but mainly to create a plan to cover your designated area and to scout out certain areas, as well as what place would be a great area for you all to meet the day of the count. Again, if you have not heard from your team lead come the 15th of January, please get in contact with Tim Long. Thank you.
Now it's time to test your knowledge of all of the information that we've talked about in this training. There is a link to a short Google quiz on this slide. The quiz is mandatory and you must score a 70 or above. After the quiz, there is also a volunteer release that we need for you to do in order to do the point in time count. Once you do all of this information in Google and submit it, you will then be able to view your score. If you haven't made a 70 or higher on your quiz, we need you to submit another response and do the quiz again and the release and send all of that to us.